I was setting up this camera, and I'm obviously sitting in some shade. And there's a few branches hanging overhead, and while I was setting everything up, I felt a drop of water on the back of my neck. Or at least I was hoping it was a drop of water. So I felt back here, and I really expected to see like bird crap on my hand, but no, I think it was just water. There was no appearance to it at all whatsoever. But the strange thing about it is there's no rain. There's been no rain. Not today. Everything's dry. How did one drop of water manage to make it to me like this? It just doesn't make any sense. I even smelled it and didn't smell like anything, which I don't know if anything else would have. But that's how this has started out. And so as I was setting things up, I realized I forgot my normal chair that I have for things like this. Is like a folding chair. And I forgot that. I forgot a few other things. I mean, I'm just making this on the fly. Do you want to know what I'm sitting on? I'll show you. This is really neat, actually. You might have seen this before, but look at this. Look at that, right there. It's retractable. You can set it. You can adjust it to different heights, however you want. Whoops. Yeah, however you want to do it. Like that. Like that. Very neat. I like this. So, I happened to run across this. Sorry, I had to put myself on the ground. I happened to run across this when I was at BioLife one day. And sometimes the lines are long while you're waiting. You're standing there for quite a while. A man and woman who were together had brought these things with them. And I thought it was really neat. They kept getting up, folding them up, and then has a little handle on it, likewise. And so they has a strap, and you can put it over your shoulder like a purse, or you can just hold it. And I thought that was just pretty genius. So I looked them up. I didn't ask them about where they got them. I just figured Amazon probably would have them, and they did. And I ordered this. I'm going to put a link for it down below because it's pretty neat. A little creaky because it's plastic, you know, but really strong plastic. But it works really well. Thank goodness I had it in my truck. Otherwise, I'd be sitting on the ground. So I like to pay attention to other people's vlogs, even if I don't know who they are, even if I don't think that I like what they talk about. I like to pay attention to what people are doing, curious as to what they have to say, what their spin is on any given thing. And believe it or not, I'll actually watch some women vlog, even when they're doing their girly things, because I just want to see how other YouTubers do things. And I ran across this one I've never heard of before. It's Margaret something. I don't remember what her last name is. I don't even know if that's her correct first name. But she must be very popular. She's got millions of subscribers. A lot of these women do. She's got millions of subscribers, and she gets millions of views. She's probably in her mid-20s from everything that she was saying. And she was talking about how she doesn't have any friends. She's kind of lonely, but she's not. What I found kind of eye-opening was that a lot of these women in their early to mid-20s have millions of subscribers, and yet it seems like they all have videos where they talk about how they have no friends and how they're lonely. And I don't know if it's like a thing, like if they're just replicating what each other are saying. It doesn't seem like that. It seems like they're genuine, because they're not throwing a pity party, but they're talking about this anyway. So I think it's interesting, but nevertheless, it's not something I would normally consume, but every once in a while I just want to find out what people are talking about. So she was talking about the angst of being in her 20s. Right? Now, I'm a 55-year-old man, so you have to understand the distinction between someone like me and someone like her. And she just was rambling on and on about how she's living with her mother. She sounds British. She's living with her mother. She could afford something much better, but she's not going to pay £3,000 a month for a one-bedroom flat. Which I get. I totally get. And she might be helping out her mom. Her mom wants somebody to live with her. I don't know if she's just by herself. It sounds like she is. And I don't know. She was just talking about all these problems. You know, all these friends that she had when she was growing up had gone off to college. She went to college, but you know, everybody goes their separate ways. Some people come back, but you don't necessarily like them. Some people change, and her world just seems very topsy-turvy to her. Now, she also talked about how she has school debt now, and she doesn't feel like going to the university did her any good. But now she has this school debt. So I'm mentioning all this because I kind of want to talk about where I'm coming from as a 55-year-old man. And there's a lot of times that as we get to be older, we wish we could go back to our 20s in some way. And we can be reasonable about it. We can be rational, but in a lot of times we fantasize about what it would be like if we just go back in time again. We oftentimes miss it. We wish we could do it over again. We know we don't get do-overs, but we have memories of seemingly more wonderful times, right? We might be thinking that what we're going through now sucks. We don't like what's happened to us. Maybe life has taken a physical toll, or whatever. Maybe we're lonely. Okay? Now, the skies are not all gray. As you get to be older, you do I think we have a greater appreciation for life, pretty much across the board. Some people don't. I know people who personally hate their life, and no matter what stage they're in. But I think I think every single one of us, as we get older and older, we reminisce and we think about how wonderful it would have been. And I miss that time, and I miss those places and whatnot. I want to encourage you, when you have those times, to not ignore them, because they can really get a hold of you and make you feel depressed if you're not careful. You might, it just might take hold of your memory in such a way that you dwell on it. But I want to encourage you that if you're going through something like that, you're reminiscing, not to ignore it. Some people might say, get it out of your head, think about something else. It is what it is, water under the bridge. Can't do anything about it. That's just ridiculous. It's just nonsense. I say acknowledge it. And I say, if nothing else, think about it some more. Because I think if you force yourself to think about it some more and wade through the weeds, you'll realize that you really don't have that much to miss in looking back at your 20s or whatever era of your life that you think you miss. The reason why I say this is our memory is very, very faulty. Law enforcement officers know this, that even eyewitness testimonies are often unreliable, because you can get eyewitness testimonies to one particular crime. You can get many eyewitness testimonies, and a lot of them do not agree on many points. They can see the same thing unfolding. They experienced the same event, and yet they did not see the same things. And our memory is extremely fallible. It's you can't rely upon it at all. And much like social media, we only show ourselves the highlights. We don't get close enough to the grass, the really green grass that we believe we're observing. We don't get close enough to see the dirt. And I go through this from time to time where I look back and think, oh man, it'd be nice to be in my 20s. I miss that. For me personally, what it was in my 20s, I spent my entire 20s studying Kung Fu. And that really was some of the best memories of my life. Hands down. It was some of the best memories of my life. And some people might say, yeah, but you had kids. How awful of you to say that when your kids being born should be the best memories. Well, in a way it was. It was just a different era. Okay? But I didn't have my first child until I was 29. My wife is 4 years younger than me. But for me, that was almost like my 30s. Okay? So in my 20s, I was extremely physically active, and I was exploring different cultures, and I was engaged in the martial arts, and always learning something new and involved. There's a community with that, and I was involved with friends that did the same thing, and you build these relationships, and it was a time for exploring and getting out on my own, and young love. You know, I was married once before, then I got divorced, I got married a second time, and I have a lot of good memories. But where our memory betrays us is oftentimes when we're looking back, we're not remembering all the bad stuff. The problem with being really young is that we don't know anything. Regardless of whether you think you know something or not, we don't know jack crap. What we have is we have energy, we have determination, but we lack a lot of knowledge. And it doesn't matter if you've gone to college or not. It doesn't matter how smart you are, how much money your parents have. We know so little. And life in your 20s is so unstable. You don't know who you are. Sometimes you don't know who you are for years, maybe for decades, but you don't know who you are. You're jumping from job to job. Relationships crop up, and that's exciting, and then they fail, and that's heartbreaking. Friends, just friendships are unstable. People change. They go off to college, they go off to other jobs, they move to different states, they get married, they start to have children, and their priorities change. And all of this is very upsetting, especially if you're not keeping in step. Well, even if you are keeping in step, you're still going separate ways. And this is one of the things this young woman talked about. She's a very pretty young woman, and yet she seems absolutely miserable. She's obviously on medication, so she says. I think she said for ADHD, but probably for more things than that, because she truly seems miserable, despite her success on YouTube. I look at her and I think to myself, wow, to be that young and that successful on social media, you don't know what you have. And that really is often the case with being that young, is that no matter what you have, no matter how good it is, you don't know how good you had it. So when we get to our 40s, that's usually when we start missing our 20s. We start thinking, I have found out that what happens is we usually miss 20 years ago. 20 years ago. For me, it's in my 30s now. I really do miss when my kids were little, okay? I miss that. I wouldn't want to do it over again. I'm old enough to know better. I'm old enough to be a little bit smarter than I was when I was in my 40s and I was missing my 20s, okay? So, I miss that time. But the problem is when you're looking back, you might wish you could go back to that time, but you want to go back knowing what you know now. You want to go back equipped with all the tools and the resources that you have now, because you're thinking, okay, I've got these things figured out. Life would have been so much better in my 20s. You may not be thinking about this much, but this is essentially what's happening. I could go back, and yeah, I got it figured out. Oh man, if I could go back and have those same experiences, I could capitalize on it, I could build on it, and life would be so great. But the thing is, that doesn't happen, never. It can't happen, and it was never supposed to happen that way. And we might point to exceptionally bright young people and say, well, they got it figured out. Their parents raised them right. They seem to have been born with this generous amount of common sense. But that's the rare exception. Even they don't really have it figured out. So we can kind of put them to the side, because even if they really are truly an exception, that's exactly what they are. It's an exception. They're not the rule. Okay? We don't get do-overs. We get to miss things. But if we look back and really, really think about how things were back then, it really wasn't that great. Studies have shown that people, as they get to be older and older, especially the very aged, tend to be happier and happier as time goes on. Despite health concerns, despite financial setbacks, despite the challenges that come with aging, they tend to be happier. And you know, when you're young and you think about getting older, you don't think that's how it's going to be. But we really do get to be happier as we get to be older. Now, there are exceptions to that too. I know, like I said before, I know plenty of people as they get to be older who are absolutely miserable. These are chronic individuals. It's probably never going to change for them. They might get treatment, and even then, it's a rough go. They have a long row to hoe. So I don't know what to say about them. But I would say that potentially for most people, you're going to probably be happier as you get to be older. So if you're younger and you're watching this and you're concerned about growing older because you've observed your parents or grandparents or anybody else, maybe people you work with, they get older and there's these challenges, you go, oh man, I hope that doesn't happen to me. Well, we all think that, but we tend to handle life differently as we age. Everything takes on a different hue and color, and we have a different perspective, and our minds are a little more settled, at least they should be, because we've had time to process things. I actually made a couple of notes. I gotta look at this. Here's two things I pointed out to myself, and I'm gonna share them with you here. Number one, as we get older, we tend to calibrate our level of intensity more appropriately. Here's what I mean by this. When you're young, if you had the wisdom, if you had the kind of mind that an older person, much older person would have, you would probably fail miserably. When you're young, you're very intense. And because things are so upsetting and topsy-turvy, you work through a lot of things. You take chances that you wouldn't take with an older mindset. Okay? When we get older, we tend to settle down more. We tend to know what we want, and we tend to know how to take things a little more smoothly. When you're young, you don't. But it's probably a good thing, because you take chances and you get places in life a little bit differently. You find yourself getting ahead, potentially, because of that energy, because of that determination, because of those upsets. That's what I'm saying. And it works out the way it does because that's the way it's supposed to be. So let's say, I'll tell you what, if I want to be realistic about everything, when I was in my 20s, even though I built some really great memories, being in Kung Fu for 10 years, building great friendships, doing this, that, everything was very exciting. Everything's very exciting, right? Because everything's changing and evolving all the time. But a lot of times it's for the worse. Sometimes some things are devolving. In a lot of ways, they were my most miserable times. I do remember the heartbreaks. I do remember the divorce. I do remember the challenges with a new relationship. I do remember making other people upset with me. I do remember the fear of losing my jobs, which to me were such a big deal back then. But yeah, they were so temporary, and I couldn't, back then when you're young, it's hard to make any money. It's really tough to make any money at all. And not knowing how I was going to pay my rent, getting those letters on my door, having falling outs with my parents, things like that. No. My 20s were not that great in a lot of ways. In some ways they were. But I really think being in my 40s got a lot better, even though some things were, I was in absolute turmoil in my 40s. In my 50s, I have problems in my 50s with, relationships, with jobs, with direction in my life, but it's different. I have a different mindset. I'm okay. I'm at peace and I'm happy. I couldn't have that when I was that young because I didn't know anything. I didn't have real life experience. I didn't have anything to draw from or compare to. And everything was so intense back then. And when you're older, the intensity dies down and we meet everything with a different level of intensity that is appropriate for the given situation that we're in, for the station of life that we find ourselves in. Our level of intensity is appropriate. And that I believe is what makes life better. It's called equanimity. Now, we need equanimity all across the board, emotionally, financially, socially, so on and so forth. And we don't always have that even now. I don't. But there's this level of intensity now that I understand how life works a lot better, and life is a lot better. You don't have that in your 20s. You can't have that. And if you can only look back and realize that that's one of the main things that you were missing back then, you realize that actually is what made you so miserable. Okay. So my first point was we tend to calibrate our level of intensity more appropriately. And number two, we're more focused as we're older. We're more focused on my mouth is dry. I'm having a hard time talking. We're more focused on sustainability and knowing our limitations. Yeah. When you're young, you don't think about sustainability. You're thinking balls to the wall, pedal to the floor, going hard. You're indestructible. I've had people tell me, and I've said it before when I was young, nothing's gonna stop me. You go all out physically. You're willing to spend your money if you can get any in a cavalier way. Your emotions are high. You give everything to her, or if you're her, you give everything to him. I mean, everything of yourself emotionally, and everything's very intense, and none of that is sustainable. And I've learned you have to get to this place. Some people don't, but I think most older people get to this place so they realize I have to do what is sustainable. Financially, I have to figure things out so I can sustain myself and pay my bills and get ahead and have something for retirement. I have to be careful how I work out, what I do with myself physically, what I do on a regular to keep myself in shape has to be sustainable. I got to make sure because I can't afford to get injuries anymore. I can't, the recovery time is different. I have to do what is sustainable. And I have to know my limitations. I had to refer back to my note here. I have to know my limitations. Knowing your limitations and doing what is sustainable makes life so much better. You can't possibly have ever done that in your 20s. And that's one of the things that made you miserable. And you might say, well, Greg, you don't know me. You don't know me. I was extremely happy in my 20s. Well, yes, a lot of us was. And I was too, at times. Just like now, at times. I'm happy, and at times I'm miserable. The difference is when you get to be older, it's like this. When you're in your 20s, it's like this. And it makes you sick. You ever just want to jump off the ride and throw up and say, listen, I'm going to need a break? You can't do that when you're in your 20s because that train's not stopping for you. That roller coaster's not coming to a halt. You can't get away from it. And a lot of young people, even today, with all the advances we've made, are absolutely miserable. Every generation gets presented with a new set of challenges and problems, and I really feel sorry for this current generation, but they don't feel bad about it because they've known nothing different. Okay? So, if you're older, and you're looking back and you're reminiscing, just think a little more clearly about it. Appreciate where you are in life now and how you're able to sustain yourself, understand what your limitations are, and meet things at a different level of intensity. And you'll understand that, yes, life is a little more calm now. Life is a little better. I still have things going on, but I can take them at a different pace. I can understand life differently. I understand how things do work out. I understand that even though everything's not going my way, it's for a reason, and it's probably for a good one, and it's building a foundation. I'm getting stronger and stronger, and I can get to the finish line. Okay, so those are my thoughts. When I was watching her, I really thought long and hard about this. In fact, one of the things she said, I thought this was brilliant. She said that her grandmother told her that her 20s are for remembering all the lessons she's been taught in life. Her 20s are for remembering all the lessons she's been taught in life. I think that sounds brilliant. I love how that comes off. I just don't think it works. I think that happens like 20 years later. You see what I'm saying? Once you start having kids, and that didn't happen 20 years later, you're not having kids in your 40s more than likely. But, you know, once your life has moved on and settled down a little bit, that's when you're remembering, Mom and Dad were probably right. Probably right. And, yeah, I thought a lot about what she said. I really did like, I do appreciate her grandmother's advice. I think that's clever and it gives us something to think about. I just don't think it's possible for someone in their 20s to really even grasp that. You still think you know a lot more than what you do. And if you don't know a lot more, if you know you don't know a lot more, you're not going to tell anybody. Okay? You're not going to do it. And that's holding you back. That's probably not going to change. Yeah. Those are my thoughts on how our 20s were really not so great. We can appreciate them for what they were. It made us who we are today. It helps us to get to where we're at. But if you're older, you're better off. Okay? You're better off. You're thinking better. You're doing better. Hopefully. I hope you can say that. All right, guys. You want a word of the day? I got one for you. The word is soliloquy. It's not a new word for me, but I very rarely ever use it. Let me tell you what it means. And you probably won't use this in a sentence anywhere. But if you hear it or read it, you're going to know after today what it means. It means the act of talking to one's self. A dramatic monologue that represents unspoken reflections by a character. Yeah. Basically talking to yourself, right? I mean, there is a second half of that. But how I soliloquize all the time. I'm constantly talking to myself, which is how I can make these videos right here. Not only am I talking to myself before you see this, because it's just me and the camera right now, but I talk to myself on the regular anyway. People would probably think that I was nuts if they saw me. But whether it's internal or it's spoken out loud, talking to myself helps me to think things through, and I hope you can do that. I hope if you're struggling through any of the things that I've talked about today, whether you're young or old, that you'll soliloquize on these ruminations and take time to reflect. Just really, really think things through. But soliloquy is a good word. You will run across this from time to time. Yes, you will. So now I'm going to give you a quote of the day. All right? This comes to us from Alice Roosevelt Longworth, the daughter of President Theodore Roosevelt. She said, "If you haven't got anything nice to say about anyone, come and sit by me." Alice Roosevelt Longworth was the only child of Theodore Roosevelt by his first wife that died during childbirth while giving birth to Alice. Her name was also Alice. Theodore Roosevelt was absolutely heartbroken about losing his wife, and not only his wife on Valentine's Day when she gave birth to Alice, but his mother also. Yes, he was so upset over losing Alice that he never would mention her name again. He wouldn't even call his daughter by her name. He called her little something. I can't remember at the moment what it was, but he always had a different reference for her he was so distraught, so heartbroken by having lost his wife and his mother on the same day, on Valentine's Day. And that was probably in his 20s, believe it or not. But life did get better for Theodore as he got to be older. He was a man of high adventure. Alice, on the other hand, was very controversial. Modern day feminists would love her, but she was a handful. While a lot of women would look at her and go, I like her, I want to be like her. Let me tell you something. No, you don't. Because she had a lot of turmoil in her life, and she was very proud, and so it kind of got her in a lot of trouble. And you wouldn't want to be in a relationship with a woman like her. I don't have a real point to make about this, but since it is the quote of the day, there you go. Hey, if you haven't got anything nice to say about anyone, come sit by me. There are people like that love to just share. What do they call that? Giving up. What do they call that? My wife sometimes will ask me, do you want some tea? I remember the first time she ever asked me that. Do you want some tea? I was like, what? I mean, I drink black tea, but she doesn't drink tea unless she's sick or something. Like, what are you talking about? Why would you ask me if I want tea? It's like, and that was, I think, when it first started becoming popular to say that. She goes, do you want to hear some gossip? And I go, what? I still don't understand where that came from. Maybe like a teacup party? Is that what they do? Is sit around and talk gossip? I mean, they probably do, but is that where it came from? I don't know. This has been a long video. I thank you guys for sticking around. Thanks for listening to me. I hope it's all meant something to you. And I would love to hear your comments down below. And I guess I'll just catch you in the next one. Until then, be wise.